We're live.
Okie dokie. All right, we'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Cheswood Park Neighborhood Association meeting for the month of September. Today is September the 11th. Tonight's meeting will be run as usual as per Robert's Rules of Order. If you have any questions, please raise your hand at the raised hand feature down by the reaction button and wait to be called upon. First off, if you would like to throw up last month's agenda, and if there are any objections for the August agenda, please raise your hand. All right. As I see no objections, we will approve last month's agenda based on unanimous consent. We will move on to this month's agenda. Are there any objections or any modifications anyone would like to make for tonight's agenda? I will say that I know Karen has multiple other meetings tonight, so if I see her log on, I will let her go ahead and give her committee report, maybe out of order, if that's okay. If anybody has any objections to that, just because I know she has other engagements this evening. Okay, as I see no objections for tonight's agenda, the agenda will be approved based on unanimous consent, and we will start off with our public safety officer report, which I do not see an officer on. We have had conversations with Major Richter, trying to get us a new public safety officer to join us for our monthly meetings. So also, if there are any elected officials, if you could put your information in the chat for us, we would greatly appreciate that. All right. And as always, if you want to get a very up-to-date public safety officer report, you can always join the NPUY meeting, which is next Monday at the same time, 7 p.m. And I think part of the reason why I forgot that today was actually the meeting, Connor, was because it is September the 11th. I wasn't sure if we were gonna do that based on being September the 11th. So
Right.
That's why I kind of spaced on that one for tonight. But moving on down to our comments from our elected officials. Our council member is Jason Winston. I am looking to see if we have anybody from his office here this evening. I do not see anyone. All right. So we will move on to our next agenda item, which is our treasurer report. And our treasurer is here. Christina, we would like to give you the floor.
Hey, everyone. So our bank statement looks a little bit different this time around. We have a lot of transactions coming and going. And that was based due to the Unity Day that we had over at the Ally Center. So I'm just getting together with Nicole when she gets a minute just to make sure that all of these are confirmed and getting receipts. But I did take a look at it, and most of them I do recognize, and most of them I do have receipts here or there. So as of now, I know our balance is, as of August 31st, our balance is $16,075. But I think that might increase because I know that there's 2 or 3 checks outstanding, I believe, that we still need to get for Unity Day, just to kind of make sure that the ins and outs, credits and debits, balance each other for Unity Day.
So we actually did have checks come in from Unity Day. I didn't realize that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, that's good. like to see the bank account go that direction.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for the benefit of the body for our treasurer? Okay, Christina, you are off the hook. Thank you very much for your report. We greatly appreciate it. Right, moving on to our
Sorry.
next item, which would be our committee reports and our Friends of Chosewood Park. Let me check and see if Taryn is on. Do not see Taryn, so let me go ahead and read her email that she has sent over to me.
You want me to put it up on the screen?
Yeah,
Or do you want to share either one? Either way.
yeah, that would be great. Go ahead and I'll just read it out.
Okay.
All right.
One second, because I. There it go. Am I looking right at it?
I'm not sure. I'm sitting on my email right now.
All right. Sorry. I think you know what? I think it's on my other. One more second here. Might just be easier to see it up there.
I'm going to go ahead and start rattling it off here while you're looking for it. So, the Friends of Cheswood Park update for tonight's meeting is September the 16th at 9:30 a.m. is their Q3 workday. For details, you can visit the friendsofcheswoodpark.org and sign up. Their Q4 public meeting is going to be October 21st at 9:30 a.m. Their updates are the tennis court mural project. Phase 2, Nalia Smith's mural in the tennis court wall has been completed in August. So far, they've received very positive feedback from the park users. Phase 3 and 4 are planned for after the playground is installed. The kudzu control from Trees Atlanta, pursuant to the 3-year contract, they have sprayed the kudzu at Galt Street and at the park in mid-July, and will spray in Cheswood Park again on September the 6th and the 29th, and for climbing vine removal on Galt Street. Please control your invasive plants if your properties is on your properties. I know that kudzu is kind of running rampant on a lot of empty lots right now and starting to encroach on a lot of people's trees and things. So if you live next to the park, especially, this especially is for you, but you can always try to tackle these projects on your own. Taking care of kudzu grows a foot a day, so it's the Galt Street entrance in the Unity Bridge. Friends of Cheswood Park is paying $6,500 for a tree survey so that Patrick Hand can get started on a budget and keep the project moving forward. Waiting for the new bridge, 3-bridge concept from Patrick Hand. Nicole will also oversee that grant through the CDC. Bobby Spiller has been working on raising additional funds from the developers that we can use for working capital to match on the grants. The playground met with Park Pride Grant Committee on September 6th, and they will receive a grant, and it sounds like they may be able to include a shade structure, which is good, as well as where the current basketball half court currently is. The grant committee seemed very happy with their plan, and they will also meet with the PP major funders, which I guess that's the Park Pride's major funder, the Woodruff Foundation. Are there any questions for our Friends of Cheswood Park?
One, Jacob. I think Darren just joined too, but I was curious. We just got our first bit of kudzu in our yard. It's really grinding my gears and making me real mad. What's the best way to get rid of kudzu? I've just been, chomping them at the bottom. But what is there a better? Is there something? What's the best way to treat it?
Yeah, you can constantly cut it, and the ball will die. It almost looks like a potato type, root ball that grows and puts out vines and shoots. But if you do continue to cut it, and the ball itself will die in the ground, or you
I have
pick it up. But Taryn, I see you're here, and she is an expert. I'm gonna.
Hey, I was gonna say I have some things to say about that. It depends on how infested your yard is. If you have like what you might be experiencing is like nuisance level infestation. So if there's, shoots popping up here and there, it's from like seeds in the seed bank in the ground, and you can just pull those out. You'll just have to keep at it or spray it or, continue mowing it. But if you have like a border of your yard where a kudzu has really taken over and become like a bigger infestation that's happened for a few years, the best thing to do is to spray it in late summer and early fall. Get the foliar spray. There's actually legume specific sprays that you can do so it doesn't kill other plants. And then the best thing to do also is it sprouts from the crown, which is like its root crown where it goes in the ground. If you get the crown and you kill it and you put and you spray it with herbicide, especially in fall, it's getting its energy stores for the winter, so it draws that in and kills the plant. So fall, treating the root crown, you can like chop it with an axe or something and then poison the root crown, and that's one way to get rid of it as well. But you have to, especially for their bigger infestations, it gets like, our thing is like you have to do it over the course of many years. Like we're planning on treating it over the course of at least 10 years in the park, because it's wild. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of using Roundup, so I'm just trying to figure out what the best way to, to tackle it.
So Trees Atlanta does recommend these 2 legume specific herbicides. Like I said, that won't kill the other plants. But I mean, you can manually also chop at the root, the crown, and just like continually do that. It's just if you have a big enough infestation, that's not going to work. It depends on how big your infestation is.
Cool, thanks.
I'm gonna nickname Taryn Walter Reeves for the neighborhood. She could be the go when it comes to the.
Oh my gosh, I'm so flattered. Thank you.
He's one of my favorite people. He's like an institution here in Atlanta. So
He's the best.
he is. He is. So now that you're here, Taryn, do you are there any questions for our Friends of Chosewood Park committee? If so, please raise your hand now. All right. Well, thank you so much, Taryn. We appreciate the update, and thank you for coming. I know you had a busy schedule, so thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Hey, I didn't get, since she was here. I'm sorry I didn't raise my hand, but I couldn't find the button. I
Okay.
guess she's on, but we do have the Friends of Chosewood Park Legacy grant on the agenda for new business. But since she's here, why does she explain it now?
Would you like to
Oh,
get-
yes. So that's what we're referring to in so that was covered in our outline as well. That's referring to the playground work. So we're going to apply for about $180,000, or actually like maybe a little bit more, because they were interested in having this pavilion installed as well. Like that was another, we thought we'd have to wait to do it, but they seemed like really positive about our project. And like I said, we're meeting with Woodruff Foundation on Friday as well. So yeah, that is the grant that we're applying for. So the grant committee came for a site visit, and then the remaining steps, they basically told us that we're going to get one. But we have to do the rest of our application, which involves getting a letter of support from CPNA, which I know is on the agenda at some point, Jacob. We're on the agenda for NPUY to get a letter of support. We'll get a letter of support from Jason and Winston. And then we're still working on our final like budgets and all the things necessary for a grant application. But the good news is that they said if we get all of our ducks in a row, that we should get probably what we asked for, or a little bit more for this pavilion. So that's concerning.
Just out of curiosity, do you guys have any kind of site plan or anything like that you've already had approved, or y'all still working on that?
For the playground, yes. And I can show that. I did post it on I think I've posted it, but I could actually share that real quick if that's of interest.
Sure. Yeah, I think that would be great. I've heard good things about this.
So just give me permission to share my screen and I will do that. Hold on, I'm pulling it up. So
I think you should have permission, but let me know if you can't.
Okay, let me see here. Okay, so got it pulled up, just trying to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see this? Okay, so the first slide here is the existing site. And where I'm zooming in is the playground. This structure right here is the existing playground. It's 3,500 square feet. And the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to expand it by about 2,000 square feet to have this wall right here. And then this is a map of the playground structure that the committee chose. So it includes an embankment slide right here that's going to go down to the path, the forested path, and that will connect to the Galt Street Bridge and entrance at some point. And then here's the new wall coming around here. There's going to be music equipment. There's this thing called an orbit spinner that everybody really enjoyed and their kids enjoyed on the committee. There's swings, a 3-bay swing set. There will be like an ADA accessible swing. There will be like normal adult swings, and then there will be toddler buckets. And then this is the play structure that's going to be installed. And I'll show you more in the next slide. So this is what it looks like. We had, a good healthy debate on the committee about which one to choose, but this is ultimately what was chosen. And there's an image of the embankment slide. Here's the orbit spinner thing. And then this is the part where we didn't think we'd have enough money because it would put us well over what the city's paying. But the grant committee seemed really excited about the opportunity to change the half court into a sort of grilling area. And so we need a new quote because I don't think this is exactly what we want, but we're going to basically have some sort of structure where people can gather and have parties and watch their kids on the playground. So we're working on the details of that, but there'll be seating and hopefully grills. And another piece of feedback I've gotten a lot is like there needs to be outlets there. So I don't know if we're going to try to get it wired or try to do some sort of like solar or something like that. But if you have, additional feedback about the shade structure, we're working on coming up with that because we didn't necessarily think that we were going to apply for funding for that yet. So, yep, that's it.
All right, that's really cool. I'm interested in the music equipment. And I know I'm going to be using that embankment slide. That looks awesome.
I can say that Patrick Hand is installing the embankment slide, and we visited recently another park that he installed one on, and there were the kids that loved it. Like there were a ton of people on it, and I wanted to use it. It was very cool. So
awesome. Well, thank you, Taryn. Are there any questions for Taryn for Friends of Cheswood Park Committee? All right. Well, thank you so much, Taryn. We greatly appreciate all your time and everything you've been putting into getting that park moving in the right direction and getting us to the 21st century over here. So like we're
yeah. Thanks, neighbors. See you all later. Bye.
Okay, next for our committee reports, we have the Cheswood Park Community Development Committee. Paul McMurray, you have the floor.
As far as I know, we don't have a lot to report. We haven't had our next quarterly meeting yet. So I'll just pass it on to Nicole to verify what I just said, or if I missed something.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so we are we did not host our last meeting. There was an oversight in our committees as we had a few other things that we were handling. We did meet with Patrick Hand in order to walk the park in regards to the Galt Street grant that we got from the state. So we did go through that and start laying out the design. Hopefully we'll have something tomorrow actually that we'll be able to look over and start reviewing so we can start moving forward with our grant expenditures. As Christina mentioned we are still closing out the Unity Day grant, which is a CIG grant through NPY. So their committee has not hosted their final closeout meeting. So once they do, then we'll have a final report for CPNA and CDC as to the funds being even balanced. I believe that we are still waiting on a check to be transferred from Jason Winston, council member Jason Winston. He did give $1,000 to the CIG fund, and that has been released from their office. However, it's not in our account yet. So we're waiting for that to be moved over, which is where the difference is on our balance sheet. Other than that, we are still moving forward with our grants. And so if anybody is ever looking to assist us with the CPNA CDC accounts, please let us know, and we're happy to bring on some new members sometime.
All right. Are there any questions for Paul or Nicole for the CPCDC? All right. As I see none, you guys are completed. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Moving on to our next committee report is our Transportation Committee, and I do not see Julie on here. But I know that she has been working on a few little projects for the neighborhood, trying to get some striping at those new stop signs that we had installed earlier this year at the Hill Street locations, and then possibly working on some other type. Is she on here? No, I didn't see her. Okay. And possibly working on some other types of improvements along Inglewood. I know that we're having conversations right now with Atlanta Housing regarding some things over at their place. So, are there any questions for the Transportation Committee? Okay. All right. Well, that completes our committee reports for this evening. We will move next to voting matters on the agenda. We do not have any voting matters for this evening. So we will move on to old business. And I guess technically some of this could be old business. So we'll move right into Nicole. I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so order of voting matters would actually be the legacy grant. It does need a letter of support voted on for me to move forward at MPU level for a letter of support.
Is this something you guys were looking to complete tonight?
That was my understanding that Taryn was going to share the information about it, and then we were going to vote. That way the community can support it. Now it could go to next month, as we will not be voting on it in September for MPUI. We'll be voting on it in October.
Yeah, I think that that would be best. That way we can make the adjustment for the agenda. And I apologize. I know both of you were a little bit late on logging into the meeting, but I think that would be best as to move that to next month. And then that would still give us enough time to send over that letter of support to the MPU level.
That'd be fine. Thank you.
So we will move on to our new business, which is our 556-514 McDonough Boulevard update. As you all know, we did have a special election to approve our retainer for our legal counsel regarding this. Miss Dunleavy has been working on this and trying to get some background information, trying to figure out where we can move forward and what we possibly would have as far as some type of recourse in order to be able to work with this. And this is a very touchy subject. It's the problem, and this is what I've heard back from the Department of City Planning, the Beltline overlay or the Beltline committee is we struggle with the SAP process. The special administration permit is completely different as compared to the rezoning. These two particular properties were rezoned back in 2000. They were zoned C2C, and the only conditions that were put onto that rezoning was that there could not be a liquor store, or I'm sorry, not a liquor store, a strip club or a tavern. Those were the only two conditions that were put on there. So we've kind of gone back and forth trying to figure out how we could work out, possibly utilizing the comprehensive development plan. And it is something that's a little bit difficult, like I said, because the SAP process doesn't carry the same weight with the comprehensive development plan. So we are currently looking at the site plan for both of these sites to see if there are any violations of the municipal code or violations for the Beltline overlay. That would be our course of action that we would be taking against this, but something that the Department of City Planning and something that the Beltline had offered us was we might want to start having conversations regarding some proactive rezonings where we have, because we do have areas that I know the neighborhood has talked about with our own visionary plan, where we would possibly come in and set up a rezoning of certain locations in order for us to be able to get the commercial space that we're looking for. So I do see one hand raised. Paul, I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor.
The properties, those two properties have been zoned commercial since the beginning of time in Joseph Park. It just so happened that we had the South Side redevelopment plan, and that's why it looks like it has a rezoning, but it didn't change the zoning of the properties. Okay, so they've been zoned commercial since before I even came to Joseph Park, which is a long time ago. Okay.
Yeah, and just so you know, Paul, looking at the information that I found on the Atlanta City of Atlanta website and in the Beltline, it clearly lays both of those properties out as light commercial.
Right. Yeah. They were, but there was a implementation of Southside redevelopment plan, which may have put some change over the whole neighborhood. But the fact that they were commercial was preceded that. Okay. So I just want you to understand that. Okay.
Yeah, and I believe me, I've been digging into this one quite a bit, trying to figure out what kind of course of action we could take. And like I said, the biggest issue is the special administration permit process, which is something that I think that we should start looking into, trying to get the process to go in a different route where it does need to come before the neighborhood. It does need to follow the comprehensive development plan. The problem for us is timing is of the essence, and we are probably going to be getting more of these SAPs prior to this Atlanta 2.0, their new type of zoning and their new type of comprehensive development plan being passed before with the city, which is why the recommendation came back that possibly we look into indirectly doing some rezoning of certain properties in order for us to keep these commercial districts. The unfortunate side is this particular developer has decided to not work with the neighborhood, doesn't necessarily care to, really speak to us at all regarding this particular location. And I can tell you, I was very upset that they approved the 514. I don't think that, there's a lot of thought and consideration being put into the location and what that particular intersection needs as far as the growth and the new type of construction that we have coming. I'm a little upset that the developer wouldn't come back and talk to us because it's in their best interest to do something that was not only good for the neighborhood but also good for themselves. And so we've tried to figure out what we can, and right now our best route moving forward is to look through this site plan and try to find out if there has been any violations to the Muni Code or to the Beltline overlay. But other than that, there's not a whole lot that we can really push on this 514 and 556 McDonough, unfortunately. So moving forward and being proactive with this, we can try to stay on top of it, with the attorney helping us, possibly doing CBAs, community beneficial agreements, as developers come into the neighborhood. And like I said, hopefully we can get some type of push with the city helping us change the way the process works with the special administration permits. Are there any other questions? Paul, do you still have your hand raised? Did you?
I still have a question.
ahead.
We're talking about, you were suggesting that other areas, we have areas that could be rezoned to something else. Now, all I can see is, and maybe suggesting that in previous zonings, maybe these two addresses should have been zoned to something else. But what, if you want commercial, what other thing would you rezone it to if it's already
It's a
commercial?
Yeah, it's a tough one, Paul, and that's why I was very upset. I mean, the intended use, the zoning is a C2C. So they use the conditions in order to be able to do nothing but essentially their market rate apartments. On 514, they only have 17 units that are categorized as affordable. I don't know the exact number, but I'd be willing to bet it's pretty similar for 556. So, as far as our comprehensive development plan, they have violated that in multiple different ways, from the elevations with those exterior facades, not adding, larger sidewalks for us, not taking into consideration the amount of volume that's going to come from that particular development and what we have in the neighborhood, and not allowing us to have any type of larger setbacks in order to have more road improvements at that particular intersection. So,
Okay. All right. One question I didn't quite get to ask. Other types of zoning would be maybe make it MRC. Is that correct? Is that the idea? We're going to take some of the MR we got, because really about everything's already been rezoned MR, or single family of some sort. And the only thing we could, I mean, that's, I want information from you when you say that. So what are we thinking about? We're going to make it MRC, which again, those guys can do the same thing to MRC, just like they do to commercial. So I was just wanting to know what other zoning could we seek.
Yeah, there's multiple different types of zoning that we could seek. We could definitely do any types of MRs, MRCs. We could do IC. There's a few different types of zoning, but with the rezoning of them and being proactive in doing that type of rezoning, we could always add these conditions onto that rezoning. Obviously, the city's done this 1,000 times over and over again. Because my question was, how do you go to a property owner and say, we're going to rezone your property? And the response was, it's a process. It goes through the typical rezoning, but it's no different than what they have been doing on those mass rezonings that they came through and did. So it's a possibility for us to go that direction. That way we can add those types of conditions and say, like you said, Paul, say we rezoned it to an MRC, we could put conditions that they're supposed to be based on the lot size, based on what they're going to be able to build. We would say, 5,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet of commercial must be involved in this development.
One piece of information from the MPU, we did get an SAP. Nicole has it, about 510 Sawtelle, and a significant feature of the SAP is specific areas where commercial is identified. So in case you hadn't looked at it, or to tell everyone else, there is somebody that at least right now claims they're going to do some commercial. So we'll see.
Yeah, we do have that. And, I think that the Kaplan group you know, has kind of listened a little bit to the neighborhood. Like I said, the biggest problem that I have and what I hear back from a lot of the other constituents is, you know, it's very rare that you have a developer that not only doesn't want to meet with a city council member trying to come to them, but also has zero interest on what the neighborhood wants, or really what's best for the neighborhood. This is the first time that I've encountered something like this where they just blatantly and flat out don't want to have a conversation with the neighborhood, and don't want to offer, you know, the things that we're looking for, as far as what's the best future use for that particular location. So this is just something I'm putting out there. This is kind of the feedback that I've been getting for these two units. Um, and you know, it's difficult, but the unfortunate side is we're kind of running on you know, the time is against us here. So we're trying to figure something out, in order to have open up this, you know, conversation again with this developer at the Contineo Group, regarding these two developments, because essentially, if you look at the master plan and you look at the future use, for the Beltline overlay, that developer essentially bought both of those properties that are our commercial district and turned it into, you know, more market rate apartments, which we have quite a few of already, and we have quite a few coming. So that is something that we were very concerned about. So I'm going to try to reach back out to the developer again. I know that our council wants to make sure that we follow the proper procedures, and we, you know, we want to try to work with them. You know, we've been lucky that this is the only out of all the developers, this is the only one that has taken this stance with us. I know the Upton was originally kind of taking that stance, but since they've been in the neighborhood, they've actually started to open up, be a little bit more receptive. And I know that they're possibly going to be working with our Friends of Chozo Park Committee to be doing some other things possibly in the neighborhood. But that's another good example of an area that we were hoping would have some commercial space. But the developer, once again, it was an SAP process. They didn't necessarily have to be rezoned. And when it doesn't go before the zoning review board, our comprehensive development plan essentially doesn't mean anything. That's very unfortunate to hear, because you would like to see that comprehensive development plan carry some type of weight, regardless of whether it's a special administration permit or if it is a rezoning. So, you know, we do have commercial space that's coming, you know, what's proposed, for the 510 McDonough, but we also have, I believe, and I don't want to misquote this, but it is, I think 17 to 20,000 square feet of commercial space that is going to be coming online at the Inglewood site. The Chote Group and the Michaels Group are the two that are working on that with Atlanta Housing. And just to put this out there, Atlanta Housing has been approved for their land disturbance permit, and they are looking to move forward with tree removal and starting that as early as September the 18th, which is next week. So, you know, be on the lookout for birds, possums, raccoons, squirrels, all these things that are going to be looking to be relocated. If you have an opportunity to throw up a birdhouse or something in the backyard, I'm sure that they would greatly appreciate that. And if you have a moment, you know, take some time to maybe walk the walk over there and check out, you know, the trees before they're gone. It's an unfortunate side of development, but it is necessary in order for them to be able to move forward with their infrastructure and to get all the things in place. So just a heads up on that one. Are there any other questions for, I guess, regarding the 556 or 514 McDonough? All right. Seeing none, I will move on. And Paul, just so you know, I have seen a few family of raccoon packs running across Grant. Quite a bit.
They're all over the place.
Bob, I see you have your hand raised. You may have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. It's actually Suzanne.
Okay.
I was wondering, is there any minimum negotiation we can do with these people on the commercial? At least maybe widen the sidewalk so that any commercial on either end, it doesn't, it kind of passes through, it doesn't impede, it encourages walking.
At this point, either we force their hand to come back to the table, and I'm not sure what's the best route to do that. They not only wanted to not talk to us, but they also avoided conversations with the city council. Councilmember Winston had tried multiple times to get them to come to a meeting. They finally met with him the day of their SAP hearing. While I was downstairs speaking in opposition, they were upstairs talking to the council member. I have looked into the group a little bit myself, and based on their website, they say they have the ability, based off of their website, to actually, do and facilitate that type of build. So I'm, really at this point, if we can't force their hand, I mean, it's kind of like all we've got left is, maybe talking to the media outlets and speaking to some of these different, like the AJC, the Atlanta Business Chronicle, Fox 5 News, and just putting that information out there and telling the story. Because like I said, it's very rare that a developer doesn't want to talk to a neighborhood at all. I don't see that as normal. Typically when you're spending tens and tens of millions of dollars on a development, you would care about the community that you're investing in. So I'm not really sure how to answer that as far as what we really can or can't do from our legal side to push this, push them to come back to the table, because I really do think that they should. I think that they don't understand the impact that they're going to have, not just on, the community as a whole over the next 50 years, but also at that intersection. We're looking at a huge uptick in growth, not just from Chosewood Park, but Benteen Park, and then also Thomasville Heights. This is a main thoroughfare that's a connection point. And once they put that cornerstone in, that property is not going anywhere. So if anybody has, free time and wants to go through that SAP and possibly go through and see if you can't find something, because sometimes, maybe the lawyer might miss something, I might miss something. Anything that we can come up with in order to get them to come back to the table would be a good thing. Bob, I see you got your hand up again.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. I appreciate it. It certainly does sound like we're stuck between the rock and the proverbial hard place here. But there was just an update for me, if you would, or for others on the call. There was a suggestion made last week that sounded eminently rational and wise to me. I think maybe Matt made the suggestion, but I'm probably being very naive. But I'm going back to Paul's point of the property is zoned commercial.
Right.
Why can't we go back to the city and simply force them to enforce their own zoning? Being again, I'm maybe being very naive here, but the fact that the Department of City Planning is arbitrarily changing zoning without officially changing zoning seems to me something that ought to be legally challenged. I still don't understand that part. Is why we can't challenge it.
Yeah, and Bob, that's a good question, because I ran the same line when I was talking to the hearing, and that was also what I put into the emails. The problem is, because it is zoned with the only conditions on the C2C is that it can't be a strip club or it couldn't have a tavern. They were using the fact that there are no other conditions on that in order for them to move forward. So I agree with you. I was very upset that they approved it, especially 514, after we gave them so much pushback on 556.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, I realize that I'm probably just beating a dead horse here, but you know, again, it seems to me that when someone says, oh, no, there are no other conditions on this commercial property except a strip club, et cetera, of course there are no other conditions. It's a commercial property.
Right.
It's like, I don't know, the fact that it's commercial would seem to suggest that it's commercial, and you don't have to have a condition that says, oh, by the way, it has to be commercial. But again, I know I'm not trying to shoot the messenger here. I understand we're in a difficult place. It just sure seems like we have some kind of recourse. But again, I'm not the legal expert, so I'll have to defer.
So I'm also adding on to that. We've asked the lawyer that we
Your
question.
Suzanne,
Correct.
can you ask that one more time? Your audio is.
We've asked the lights that commercial doesn't mean commercial.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, I put together a pretty nasty email to send over to the Department of City Planning. I actually got a phone call saying that maybe I shouldn't have said some of it and used the language that I did in some of it. I mean, I wasn't really rude or anything, but I brought up the exact same point that Bob just brought up. I don't understand. Can someone please help me understand how a C2C is allowed to have no commercial? And
Right.
the unfortunate side is, like I said, because it goes through the SAP process, it completely changes the narrative and how much weight, which is zero from what I can tell, on our comprehensive development plan. So I kept trying to figure out, well, how is this possible? This is the intended use for this zoning. This is what it's supposed to have. How can they approve it? I noticed somebody had mentioned this in the chat as well. The developers are smart. They have their own legal teams. They have their own guys that can figure these things out. And they basically, looked into it and said, this is, from the developer standpoint, they picked the low hanging fruit, the easy stuff. So the stuff that has to be rezoned, they know they're going to have to come to the neighborhood. So they tend to pick things that are going to follow that SAP process. I'm not sure. I think that maybe we should all start to me, I think public shaming is a great tool. I don't know how far it'll get us. But I'd even thrown it out there that it may be a frivolous lawsuit to bring forth some type of cease and desist or a demand letter, but at least it puts them at back into would we like to have some type of settlement discussions? Would we like to have some type of agreement that's made with the neighborhood? To do what's best for the developer and what's best for the neighborhood. And in all sincerity, I know this to be a fact. The Department of City Planning is afraid of these type of developers, and they're afraid of legal action. So if they don't find something that violates the municipal code or goes against the Beltline overlay, then they're not going to deny these types of SAPs. They're going to approve them. And I even said in my email to the city, it's not fair for the neighborhood to have to fight developers when they should be, turned down from the city side. But it's one of these really weird circumstances that the rezoning happened back in 2000, and those were the only conditions that were put on it, which is why they have brought up the idea of possibly going and doing some proactive rezoning where we pick if we would have proactively rezoned that, which how were we supposed to know this? The only way that this came about was because we had this type of developer. But say we picked a location and said, we want this to be a commercial zone. We could go and we could proactively get it rezoned and put those types of conditions on it. So, I mean, just for the sake of time though, if anybody has any questions, I'm going to put my information in the chat. And if anybody wants to call me, talk more about this, I will be glad to, give you whatever information and whatever tools you need to be able to look into this more. Hopefully that answered your question a little bit. I know it's tough to answer, when I'm kind of not really getting very specific answers. So Paul, I see you have your hand raised, and then I'll go to you, Caesar.
I just want to say from years I was MPU chairman and dealing with zoning issues, it's standard practice that if you have a more intense zoning, which C2 is considered over residential, you can develop based on a less intense zoning, which a residential development is considered. And this has nothing to do with the Beltline or SAPs. Okay. This is being done right now at the corner of Federal Terrace and Boulevard at 573 Federal Terrace. Federal 573 Federal Terrace is a commercial property, just like 556 is. But they presented a plan to build 4 very relatively close houses and a duplex. But since it was a residential site plan, and it's considered less intense than the existing commercial zoning, they can do it. Okay, it has nothing to do with SAPs or the Beltline. It just happens because it's in the Beltline, they have to get the SAP, right? But it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's done all over the city. Okay, and it's very, and they can still do it if we zone something MRC. It's the same idea. Okay, so even though we don't something MRC, there's no requirement that they have to do commercial. Okay, that's all I gotta say.
All right. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate those comments. Caesar, you have the floor.
Yeah, I agree with Paul. But I can speak from personal experience over in Summerhill. In the middle of developing a project that was already approved by the city, the neighborhood of Summerhill changed their neighborhood. I don't know if it's zoning requirements or whatever it's called. I mean, maybe it's our Chosewood Park development plan, but they changed their policies to say not require. They would not allow driveway strips on residential properties. When we had plans that was already approved for that, we were in the middle of development. We got a stop work order put on our house because of the new rules that were passed by the neighborhood. So maybe that's something that we can use as a tool to require them to at least make wider sidewalks for commercial properties.
Yeah, that is a good point, and that's kind of one of the points that I brought in my conversations with the lawyer and a few other folks is if we're able to tie this property up, maybe in possible litigation, is it something that we would be able to come back and use this as a proactive rezoning, use this particular property and do a proactive? I haven't gotten a response on that question yet, but that's something that I thought of because, once again, once they start, it makes it difficult. And I will say that is kind of a strange procedure to be in the middle of a development and then have them come back after the new requirements come in and say, you have to make the site revisions yourself and change.
Yes.
That seems kind of strange. Once they've already approved your site plan to come back after the fact. That seems kind of weird.
Yes, and that's what we thought. And then, of course, as the developer in that case, you're thinking, well, we can go file suit, but you're not concerned about that because you're trying to develop your project. So you'd rather work with the neighborhood than fight the neighborhood. That may be something that we can, try just to update our requirements and get that passed and then get that whatever approved at the city, and then that's the way to get a stop work order put on a project. And I have the proof.
Well, I would love to take this conversation offline and we can chat more about this, Caesar, because
Okay.
point, I'm looking for any avenue or any way and direction that I can take this in order to get the developers to follow through with what they should, which, quite frankly, it's like you said, I mean, and this is what I told the lawyer today or the other day. I said, even if we were to bring something that might not have as much merit as it should, um, do you really think that the developer would countersue the neighborhood in order to build something that the neighborhood doesn't want? I just don't see that being their course of action. Um, they're a local developer. These guys are based out of Decatur. So, to me, I think, this is just me personally, a good name is worth 1,000 riches. What developer wants to come in and sue a neighborhood when they're trying to fight for their neighborhood? I don't know that that would be their course of action. So my biggest concern is just trying to get them to come back to the table and have conversations with us so that we can address some of the things that, quite frankly, I feel like the GDOT and ATL DOT missed. There should have been setbacks larger that incorporated those amenity zones, that had those pedestrian pathways, that included, proper curb cutouts in those locations and gave us, extensions on bike lanes and things like this. So I feel like there was a big miss on a bunch of different departments on that particular site, on both of them, quite frankly.
And I'll say this, and then this is the end of my comment. They wouldn't be suing the neighborhood if we passed those requirements and had that proof with the city would be the one that puts the stop work order on their project. So they'd come after they'd have to sue the city,
Correct.
not us.
Correct.
And no developer wants to do that because you want to keep your good name with the city so that you can get your permits approved.
Yeah, and I brought this up too. I was very surprised that they were, that they're afraid of these developers and that they leave it up to the neighborhood to make these fights. Like, we're not set up, we don't have the type of funding and the resources to really make this fight. But if we don't do something, at least try to do something, then unfortunately we're stuck with it. And I do know for a fact that those two developments are not positive for our neighborhood. They're not. I mean, that's my personal opinion. And I think that the body has kind of shared that same type of opinion just based on the votes that have been passed on this, and the fact that people were willing to, vote in and get legal counsel to try to help us out with this. So thank you, Caesar. Let's chat offline and see what we can't brainstorm and come up with some ideas, because I do like the direction that you're headed with that. Suzanne, I see you have your hand raised. You're still muted there.
Okay, I got it. So I think all these proposals are great. We've got nothing to lose. The name of the game is delay. Because once they start building, nobody's going to stop them. We're done. So let's get the lawyer involved. Let's follow what Caesar did. Let's follow what the city. But if we make it difficult for them, I mean, at one point they got to come to the table. They got to say, it's not worth it. Let's talk to them and find out what the minimum is we can do to appease them. Especially if the city gets involved, as Caesar mentions. Anyways, that's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Ms. Duvall, see that you have your hand raised.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Is that McDonald Boulevard, is that considered a state road?
Yes, it is a state road.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking, kind of going along with the gentleman that was talking about the city implementing some restrictions. But with that being a state road, I think another suggestion could be contacting the state DOT board member, because there's a board member that represents each congressional district that is appointed by the legislature. But I know when I was in Clayton, I had a good relationship with my our DOT board down there, and they can intervene in as well to even have DOT to look at with those two developments, how's that gonna impact the traffic there? And maybe there may be something that they can implement in as well to kind of go along with the city. Because even when you talk about pedestrian safety, which is, I know that's a big thing that DOT and the Georgia Highway Safety Patrol been talking about. So many deaths been happening with pedestrians in areas. So I just having to think about that when I was listening to the other gentleman make that comment.
I think that's a great idea, and I'm going to write that one down as well and add that to my arsenal of ideas to come up with. So thank you so much. I appreciate that, Mr. Ball. Nicole, you have your hand raised. You may have the floor.
Yeah, just to piggyback on Mr. Ball's comment is so it is a state route. Currently GDOT does have plans to hand it over to the city. However, it's a future project, and so trying to get them to change or implement any new plans right now has been a struggle for the MPUI Transportation Committee, as they essentially want to leave it as their state route as is until they come up with a complete plan, versus having smaller implemented restrictions for each area.
Yeah, and I thank you for that, Nicole. And I do think that that's part of where we kind of ran into some issues where they had department heads that are changing. There's future stuff that's coming. And that's the unfortunate side of what we're facing here is Jesuit Park doesn't have the luxury of time on our hands because the developers, I believe, have kind of gotten wind of these types of things and they're looking to move forward as quick as possible with these types of projects. So the best thing we can do is be vigilant, continue to talk with the rest of the neighborhood, bring this up as much as we possibly can. I mean, I would even recommend as many folks that are on here tonight writing to your council member rather than it just being me or the other executive board members. I'm going to use pickleball here as the example. They had a loud voice and they got some things moving on their side, and I think that that's where we need to be as well. We need to start getting loud, and start trying to bring this up in every single place that we can to talk about the issues that we're having and that we're facing. So, are there any other questions regarding the 556 McDonough update? Bob, did you raise your hand?
Okay, it's me. So would you put in the chat where we could send, if we're going to do that, letters to the appropriate people so we have the address and we can all coordinate that?
Yes, give me 1 minute and I will find the contact for us to send that over to.
Okay, I think if everybody wants to do that, it doesn't hurt us and it might give the city a reason to pause and relook at this situation.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Suzanne. Let me pull that up real quick while I'm sitting here. Are there any other questions regarding this? Okay. As I see none, I will move on, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll put Councilmember Winston's information here in the chat. Let's see.
Jacob, I had a quick question. I'm sorry.
No, sure. Go ahead, Mr. Ball.
Okay, yes. Do we know when the developers plan on starting the build? I know we said we pressing against time, but do we have any idea?
I can't say for sure, but I do know that the SAPs have been approved. And I believe that they have been approved for their LDP. Usually when that happens, they're looking to move forward as quick as possible. Now, I am not really too sure about this particular developer because looking on their website, they don't really have much information on other locations and other types of builds and these types of things. So I almost even kind of consider if they aren't going to actually do the development themselves, if they have someone else that they're working with, I'm really not sure because we've just been in the dark the whole time. The only information that we can get is through, third parties, either through the council member, through the Department of City Planning, or going to the SAP hearings themselves. And, going back to what Bob had mentioned there, during and Paul, during the SAP hearing, they brought that up as a commercial corridor. That's how they introduced it, as this is a commercial corridor. This is what they're proposing. So I was very, taken back at the fact that they even introduced it that way at the SAP hearing, and yet there was no commercial. So I will look into that and see what I can't find out. And I'm just honestly, every day that I go past that location, I'm waiting to see some type of equipment or something sitting out there. So hopefully it's not soon, and hopefully we can move forward with it. I'm trying to find Nicole, if you could help me out, or somebody else here, if they could possibly. I'm not sure if I have Councilmember Winston's email to send out.
I'll find it and I'll find his rep for you as well. That way you can keep moving on.
I am going to put his phone number in the chat. And, I just, like I said, the more that we bring this up, Pamela, thank you. I appreciate that. And here is his contact.
I'll post this when I post the YouTube video to the group. I can put it in the comments too, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Can I ask a quick question? I've reached out to Jason a few times and he's been unresponsive. Would it be helpful to reach out to other council members, or is that out of line? Would that be like going over his head?
No, I wouldn't say that's going over his head. I guess the next best person to reach out to might be District 12, which overlaps with us on District 1, and that is Councilmember Lewis.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and Nicole, you had put that information in there. Michael Ulmer, if you have a hard time getting in touch with Jason, this is his new guy, new intern that's working with him. So Michael Ulmer is working directly with Councilmember Winston, and I will say that if you work that direction, you will get a response generally quicker, because Councilmember, I know he has quite a bit of stuff going on. So Nicole, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just to comment on Pamela's question. I don't know that it's best to go to District 12. It would actually probably be better to go above council member. And there's even a council member rep that is strictly for transportation, or to go up to a city department. District 12 council member Antonio Lewis, his response on anything that really has to do with District 1 is essentially that he does not oversee anything in District 1, and he will not participate in anything going on. It's kind of a strange relationship, and it's been there for decades. It's nothing new between our council members. It seems like they are rival councils for some reason, even rival districts, that is. And it seems to be an ongoing concern that we've been trying to facilitate, but we have ran into that issue with other matters not pertaining to this when they are actually on boundary streets. So Councilmember Lewis may not be your best option to get any sort of true response or answer if Jason Winston is not answering. But you can reach out to maybe Kieta Homes or our Department of City Planning reps. They might be a better answer to help you just kind of push forward those emails and responses.
Yeah, and I will say it's not going to fall on deaf ears. The more that we push this out there, the more that we will get a response, and hopefully the response we're looking for. So, the more we make him aware of these issues that we're dealing with, the better off we're going to be. So, thank you guys for that input. And Bob, I see you have your hand. I'm not sure if it's you or Sam, but you guys have the floor.
Yeah, it's me. So can we decide who we're sending it to, and can we get the email addresses to these people, and will somebody tell Winston that we're doing this not to go over his head, but we're trying to help him bring pressure so that he can support us. But if somebody can put emails, I'm willing to write.
Yeah, so the information that Nicole has put in there for Michael Ulmer, his office number, his cell, and his email is in there. I also put Jason Winston's number in there, and Pamela has added Jason Winston at the Atlanta.gov.
And Keisha, are we sending anything to Keisha?
You could send, if you would like to send something to Kieta Homes, Nicole.
Right, yeah.
Kieta Holmes is the Department of City Planning Director. So rather than it just being an email from, me or, another executive board member or Paul, because I know Paul has emailed her quite a few times. The more people that chime in on it, the better off we're going to be as far as, them understanding that there is some serious pushback from the neighborhood on this particular development.
Okay, I see people are putting email information, so good. We'll just follow up and send emails. Does anyone send us a form, or do we just bring attention to the fact that we need responsiveness from the city on these two properties?
Yes, that we would like to have something done regarding these two properties. You can bring up whatever point you want. Whether you think the intended use of the zoning isn't correct, whether you think they should have larger pedestrian pathways, if there should be commercial, whatever it is, just put that in the email and send it on over. So I do feel like this is a good opportunity for us to kind of, band together here and get a louder voice to be heard, because I in the email I sent out, I was, I straight up told, city council and the Department of City Planning that we are extremely frustrated that they passed, especially 514. 556, I could understand maybe it snuck through, but there was no, to me, there was just really no justification in the fact that they actually passed 514, other than what their response was to us, that it's an SAP. We don't have to adhere to the comprehensive development plan, and it's obvious that the developer doesn't care too much about the neighborhood, really. They care more about, I guess, their bottom line than the future of our neighborhood. So it's up to
Okay,
us.
so we can send all these letters with all these points, and the point of it is just to delay and get somebody to respond, and so that the developers start feeling some pressure to come to the table. If nothing else, to tell us we're just going to go ahead, but at least we've tried.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there, Suzanne. I mean, it's not that they would just tell us, oh, we're going to do what we want. It comes back to being reasonable from their side. Like, what developer really wants to be that big of a bully in a neighborhood when they're a local developer? I just don't see that as being the stance that they would take. I mean, if they do, then I mean, I know I'm personally up for the fight. I'm fine with trying to figure.
I think all of us probably are. Thank you. Let's do that. I mean, I'm happy to do that and follow suit.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. With that being said, I will move on to our next agenda item, which is the FOCP legacy grant, which you guys did bring up. Do you want to go back over that anymore? CDC?
No, that's the Friends of Chosen Parks legacy grant, which we had already discussed. We'll be voting on next month.
Correct. Okay, well then we will move on to our last agenda item. This is our closing statements and announcements for any kind of community concerns. Nicole, you have your hand raised. You can have the floor.
Yeah, so as discussed, there is an SAP for the Sawtail Department development. And so I did put it in the chat. Obviously, there's no vote that needs to happen. We are reaching out to Kieta Homes to see Anna Marie Hazard to see if she is willing to come to our October meeting to give us a full update. This is for their land disturbance, which is removing of the two building structures and also for the future development of only 2 portions of the whole 510 Sawtell property. And that is Plan A, which is the townhomes. They did not have a design built before, so it now does have townhomes on it. And also the center portion, which is a large apartment building with commercial space on it. So I put those PDFs in there for anybody that would like to review them. We will be, like I said, trying to see if we can get Anna Maria Hazard here to go over them, since it is a little hard to read the plans in a broader concept.
Yeah, that is a good point there, Nicole. And I have been trying to reach out more to the other developers in the neighborhood, so hopefully I can get more of a update regarding everything from Empire, Upton, Stanley Martin, all those types of developments that are going on, Toll Brothers, and see if, you know, some of them might be willing to come in and start giving us monthly or, you know, maybe quarterly updates on where they're at, and you know, answering questions and concerns from the community. So we are working on trying to get more engagement from those developers. Are there anything else that anybody wants to put out for a community concern or has any questions? All right, well, seeing none, I would like to make a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting.
Second by Nicole Weiswasser.
Seconded by Nicole. Okay, are there any objections to adjourning the meeting at 8:21 p.m.? All right, seeing no objections, the meeting is now adjourned. And thank you everyone for coming out this evening. Good questions, good feedback. Hopefully we can get the direction that we're looking for here on some of these other developments, and specifically the McDonough developments here. But thank you everyone for coming out tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jacob, for all your hard work. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.